second, let me start seeing here. Yes, bravo indeed. 422 connecting. What was the password? I think 6080, right? Yes, I was right. 6880. Okay, I'm connected. So let's start. As I was saying, uh, first of all, I would really like to apologize for my very bad English. I will try my best to make you understand the code. If I am failed, please forgive me. Okay, so I'm gonna explain the app by its flow. As you know, first of all, splash screen will started. So here you can see splash screen's Java file, which is backend code. I will not explain the front end, which is XML, because most of you already know that. So cool. Okay. So this is on create. In on create, we are just here setting the XML file. This is a global shared preference class. It's a custom class I created to keep all the shared preferences values in one place. I am going to open this class. As you know already that if we don't want to use to store data is shared preference. Shared preferences are saved throughout the application. I mean, you can access its data from any application at any point. Just a second. Huh? My phone है मैं आ जाना sorry about that. At any point in the application we can access that data. So I created this class because whenever I need to access shared preference, I don't have to write all this code every time. So I just put all that code in one class and created that class and give public values, features, properties, sorry, to the objects and function which I need to access at any point at any time later on. Okay, in the constructor, okay, in the constructor I'm receiving a context. The charger is not connected. Okay, in the constructor of this class I am receiving a context object which will be used to initialize locker preferences shared preference. And here you can see its function. By 0 it means this shared preference will be private. By private I mean not any other app can access this data. Only this app can access that data which will be stored by this application in shared preference. This is the shared preference object that will be accessed at any time at any point in the application to open an editor to save values in shared preference and then to get values from shared preference. This object will be used. This is a string object that is static and public. It's a one-time value that I put here to make it global so that I can access that value anywhere. I will explain this part later. See shared preference name. It's a string. You can name it anything. Okay, so moving on. This is then the next line. I'm initializing a session manager. Session manager is also a custom made class. Made this class. What? Why Hangout is in prong again and again? Please message. Can I make it silent? God. Okay, in session manager class I made to maintain a session. Session was that a user may not that a user will not need to sign in every time he or she open the app. Only once when the user open it, he'll just sign in or sign up. Then this session manager class will save its session, and after that, when user launches app next time, we will check in session manager that a session is already created or not. If a session is already created, then that user will be redirected directly to dashboard after splash. If session is not created, then that user will be directed to login screen after splash. This is session manager class main purpose. Going to open this class. Okay, in this class we also used shared preferences to store data and not database. It's optional. You can use phone's local DB as well, or if it's just 2 or 3 values, you can store them in shared preference, which I did here. These two values are the key names to store that value. Session, yes. Session. What's that? शानलू क्या क्या लिखा हुआ मुझे कुछ समझ नहीं आ रहा. I don't know what it is. Oh, okay. Just pause and then explain to your friends. I will stop at that point. You explain to your friends. Then I will continue from that point whenever you say. Okay? Okay. So, as I was saying, in Session Manager, we have created 4 public string static values. Why these string values are static? Because they are at class level and not object level. You know the behavior of static variables. You don't need to assign memory to these objects every time because you only needed them once and you don't need to change its value later as well. So first value key underscore username is key to store username inside shared preference. Second one is key underscore type. This is a key to store user type in shared preference. Third one is underscore login. It's also a key value for shared preference to store a bool value, true or false, for in shared preference. Then comes preference name, which is local preferences, same as before, because we don't want to create a different shared preference file here. We will just use the previous one created for this application in Android. Okay, first. Okay, I'm slowing. Did you understand the key values I just explained and shared preference? I mean, okay, I'm gonna start session manager all over again. Okay, I was saying that this first line key underscore this is a string value unselect. Okay, this is the key value for shared preference. As you already know that whenever you want to store a value in shared preference of Android, you need to define a key against which that data will be saved in shared preference, because later on when you need to access that data inside your app, you need to tell the shared preference what was that key. So it has to be exactly same, that otherwise null null value will be returned. So that's why we have created this static and final. So it's initialized and declared once, it cannot be changed later. Second one is key underscore type. It is to store user type inside shared preference. First one is to store username of user. This is underscore login to store that does a user already signed in or not, a session is opened or not. This value is the key for that. After name, preference name for that file, shared preference file. This is after that shared preference object. This one, it's a preference object. I just declared it. After that, editor object. This is underscore context. This is a context object. I put it globally so that whenever I need to access applications context, I just use this object instead of getting application context. Because in custom classes, you cannot call for application context unless you extend some fancy Android class. Okay, this is integer value for private mode. This is the constructor for session manager. In constructor, I'm receiving a context, and then that context will be assigned to this class's context object. As you can see, both names are different, so we can remove this this object. This is actually a pointer which points to current alive context of this class. After that, in this line we are initializing preference object using that context to get shared preferences. If not created, then this line will create local preferences shared preference file in private mode, which has been passed here. And then in editor, we have saved editor, opened editor of this shared preference file. Okay, moving on to next function, which is create login session. This function is to create a new session of login. This is called whenever a user signed in or sign up. It is receiving two values, string type of username and string type of type. Once it's called in its first line, open up editor and tell editor to save a boolean value against key is underscore login and the value is true. I just passed here. By that it means a session is opened. Then in next line we have saved username of who or whichever user call this user point, call this function passing that username. We have saved it here, and then in next line we have saved the type of that user. By type I mean coordinator or simple user, and then commit those changes in shared preference. After that, that user session is opened and saved inside this application's shared preference file. This is a check login function you created just to check if the user has already logged in or not. Get login type function. This is to get the type value from shared preference whichever is stored. This function will return that. This is a logout function. We created it to log out or close a session, active session. Inside put boolean. We are assigning false. Here you can see against is login key, so that next time splash screen will open. It will check is user logged in or not. Then this function will return false. So it will say no, and then redirect that user to login screen. This is login function is also doing the same thing. It's called here check login. So this is the session manager class. Did you understand it? Any question or anything, or am I missing something? You can ask me about this. Okay, moving on. In the next line REST client manager dot initialize. This line is just initializing this simple REST client handler API's some debugging mechanism or something. Actually, it's part of the syntax to use this library. So this line belongs to this simple REST client handler library. It's initializing its values or whatever that library requires. Okay, and then very next line pretty toast dot init icons. This line is to initialize a third-party library I used by the name of Pretty Toast. It's just to show toast with some fancy color. It's a custom library, so this line is also syntax of that library. We need to call this line in order to use that library anywhere else inside app. It was the syntax, so it was the okay. Then in the next line, new loading task dot execute. This line is also this line belongs to a custom class I created. This class is the loading just a second. Okay. This is a custom class we created to load a sync task in the background to do some kind of task or background activity or anything we want to do. In this case, we are just waiting for 2 seconds, waiting or starting a thread that just sleep the whole application for 2 seconds and then call the function on task finished of this class. And then in this class, and then in this function, which will be called after 2 seconds of this line, after executing of this line, this on task finished function will be called, and in this function we have checked if the user has a session. If so, if the user does have a session, then inside we checked what is the type of that session, whether it is user type or coordinator. If it's user, then we have started user activity dashboard. If it's coordinator, then we've started coordinator activity dashboard and start activity, and after that just called finish, which will clear the previous activity from the memory and totally close it. If user does not have a session open, then else will be called, and in else we have started sign in activity and then start activity and then finish this splash screen. After that it will move on to sign in or dashboard. So from here I will move on to sign in because that flow is just two screens. Inside sign in activity, I'm opening it. Okay, this is the sign in activities Java code. Screen just frozen. Okay, it's moving again. Okay, this is sign in activity. It's extending app compat activity. In this activity, we have created two edit text object and one session manager object. Edit text object, you know why, and session manager object is to open up a session after user successful login. This is a hide keyboard function. This function is to just hide the keyboard whenever user presses or touches anywhere outside the edit text box. just some UI. Mojo. And the setup UI, this will set up this mechanism in which user will, whenever touches outside the edit text box, soft keyboard will automatically hides. And this is on create function. In this function here, we just initialized that global shared preference class, custom class we created. Just gave that class the current context. So if we access it here, or any shared preference, it will have the latest application context and not the previous context, which was cleared from memory by calling finish function. So we need to keep that in mind, that of that context of that global shared preference needs to be current or updated, whatever you call it. Then initializing session manager object. After that, here we are linking these edit text to XML objects. Here is a button object for button. Here we are registering and initializing on click listener on that button, which will listen whenever a click is occurred on that button. And when that click occurs, we have called a function that we created, attempt login symbol, which is created in the bottom. I will explain it in a bit. Then there is this text view. This is that bottom text view which says if you don't have account, sign up. This is registering a text list or on click listener on that text view. If the user click on the text view, we will open sign up activity inside that click listener. As you can see the code, we are opening a sign up activity. From this activity, signing and flag activity, these are just setting flags that it will clear all the previous activities opened by this application and then start the new activity of sign up. This is applying a transaction animation, fade in, fade out from the resource, and then call finish. Finish will destroy this activity. And then there is this forgot password. Text view, it's also doing the same thing as sign up text view, just it opens up different activity which is forgot password. And in this line we're setting up the UI element of that XML. Yeah, the same. Alright, this is the main deal, which is attempt login simple function. In this function, first of all, I will explain what is happening in this function, then I will explain which line does which part. Okay, we created this function in the flow of, first of all, we will get whatever is written on those two text views, sorry, edit text, wherever the user has entered in those. When the user click on submit button, we extend the edit text and save them in separate string objects. After that, we have created a boolean variable and initialized it with false and created a view variable focus view and initialize it with null, and then check that we have earlier we extracted that string from those to edit text. You have applied all the checks on those strings that does the user has entered any text in those text field. If not, then we have set in that boolean variable for true, and focus view variable we have set whichever edit text is left, enter the text, and then in the end we check if that cancel boolean variable is true. This means that user has not entered a valid or something, some edit text is missing. mm, okay, this is fun, seriously, it's fun. Okay, moving on, moving on. Okay, this function you understand. How about this sign-in task class? One, two, three, four. Hey. Mm, it's happening again. This is ये वो पार्ट है जब यहाँ भी ऐसा होता है कि लोग स्पेशली पठान आपस में पश्तो में बात करते हैं। क्यों बात करते हैं? इसलिए बात करते हैं ताकि उनके इर्द गिर्द जो दूसरे लोग होते हैं उन्हें समझ ना आए कि वो क्या बात कर रहे हैं। अभी भी यही हो रहा है कि वो मेरे सामने दूसरी ज़बान में बात कर रहे हैं, तो ये मुझे समझ आया कि वो क्या बात कर रहे हैं। कोई बात नहीं, कर लो। Message me when you're ready to move on. This JSON from REST client. Which JSON? Yep. This REST client manager dot get instance dot make JSON request. This is a custom of this is a default function of that library we included to make web services call. So it's a syntax actually. Make JSON request is a function. It receives three parameters. First one, you tell whichever web service you're about to call is get or post from request.method.get. Second parameter, it receives the URL of that web service, and third parameter is the response back from that web service, kind of like click listener. Response back And in response back, we pass a request handler. A request handler is also a class from that library request, and it's a interface actually. Yes, exactly. Get or post from PHP. When we created functions in PHP, we tell PHP its type, post function, or it's a get function, or there is one more type. I don't know. Uh, Go up, go to any function in PHP. You'll see a small parameter of post or get parameter. No name actually. Will dear. Wait a second. Let me point here. This get, it's telling PHP that this function's type is get. This underscore post, it's telling PHP that this function's types are post, get ones are get. So depending or according to this type, we will tell that library in Android the type of this function, whichever function we're about to call. So in that sign in, we are calling sign in method, and in front of sign in you can see there is get written, so it's a get method. That's why we have passed request method dot get there. Okay, so moving on, minimizing. So this task, async task class, you know, do I need to explain this or you guys had? Okay, I'll explain it anyway since there is no reply from you guys. Okay, as you can see, this class extends async task. Async task is a background task or thread which extends or implements three methods on pre, post, execute, and do in background. All these methods have their different, we call them, purpose or something. On pre-execute will be called whenever this thread is about to do its task. Do in background is called throughout the thread. I mean, we do our most or all the work in this function, and after this method on post execute is called. On pre-execute we initialize the loader saying signing in, please wait, and in do in background we have initialized two values received from wherever this async task is called, and then assigning and then making a URL, a get URL. After that, just hitting the web service using that third party API, no big deal. And in that third party API API response handler, we have tell a success response model and a failure response model. Success response models is is for that JSON return data. I mean, whenever the web service is called, it has returned some JSON response data. This is a model class which tells the Android or the third-party API what are the parameters of that JSON data that will be returned upon success, and this model will tell it what are the response variables or JSON returned by that web service in case of failure. This method on request success will be called whenever this web service is hit successfully and it returned 200 code response code, which means on success that it has successfully reached and returned some data in response in this object response object. After that, we just dismiss the loader, extracted status from that response object, and then check if it says success, which we written in the web service, then obviously it means that variable or that JSON response object will contain all the user information returned from the database of our project, and then from that response object we extracted all the information and saved it in global shared preference here against their respective keys, of course: username, user ID, name, last name, email, user phone, user type, and then opened a session here, saved the type and everything, and then here we checked what is the user type, and according to that user type we have opened up respective dashboard coordinator and you or user, sorry, and that's it. In case of error or failure, we have just shown or display a toast. Here pretty toast is used just to show error. Show it show error method means actually that color of that toast will be red. Show success method means color of that toast will be green. Okay, so this is full sign in activity. Any question? Anything? Okay, awesome. Let's move on to another word. Now let's go to sign up. Sign up, sign up, sign up. No, 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 no. No? Okay. Then where? Aha, a question. But it's not for me. Any class. Alright, Captain. Continue. Okay. Alright, kids. Now we move on to sign up activity. Sign up activity is also doing absolutely, okay, not absolutely, but same thing as sign in. The only difference is the number of edit text. That's it. Booking. Alright, let's go to booking. Okay, closing, closing, closed. Okay, so this is this one, the one you have opened. Book locker user activity. This time. Alright, thank you very much. You have saved 30% of my breath. We want booking class. Okay, then you can have that class. Alright. Okay, this class. Should I start? Should I start it? Okay. Okay, I'm gonna start this class now. First of all, this class has 5 spinner object, 2 button, 2 radio button, 1 edit text, and 1 string user ID. I created this string just to make it global so that only once when this activity is created or opened, we extracted from share preference whatever the user's ID is, because almost in most of or all of the services that we call, we have passed a user ID. Okay, so moving on to onCreate method, which will be called when this activity is created. First, this line, same thing, global share preference initializing. This line, second one, just retrieving user ID from shared preference. This, oh, you have arrowed it, so it must be important. Okay, this line is actually retrieving whatever the user ID. Just a second, hold on. Okay, sorry about that. This line is retrieving whatever the user ID saved in shared preference when user signed in or signed up. So we are receiving that from shared preference and saving it in user ID object. So we won't have to retrieve it from shared preference every time we need it. And in next line, I'm just initializing that M selected locker object I created in global shared preference. Now I created it in global shared prefs class it because I want to access it in that dialog box open, and that is a different class. I need to access this variable in 2 different classes. That's why I created it static in a different class to make it global, so that I can access it from both class and it will have the same or new value whichever is updated into this object at later point. After that, just initializing edit text and all the UI elements, linking them to front end. Here is the button. Now this is that big button which is displayed in the bottom. Says choose your locker, and this button is clicked on its on click listener. I have opened up a fragment dialog box. You can say a dialog box, yeah, or whatever. It's custom dialog, so it's called fragment dialog or dialog fragment. Yep, we've created a custom class for this dialog fragment which extends dialog fragment. I will move on to that later. This is the syntax to open up that dialog box, passing that dialog box whatever the block is selected by the user and convert typecast it to string value and then pass it to this constructor of that dialog, comma, another value is floor, whichever floor is selected at the moment by the user, also typecasting it to string and then passing it to that fragment dialog, then opening it, and that dialog will call a web service, get all the values. I will move on to that later. Moving on at the bottom, here is the temp to book locker function which will be called upon on click listener of the button book. This function just checking first, check has the user entered or selected all the information proper. Proper I mean dash. Okay, here here we extracted the locker object we created in a class of string type. We accessed it whatever the locker number is saved inside that variable. We saved it in a different string variable, and in the next line extracted student ID from the edit text and saving these two values in a different object so that we can check it. And after that, here we have saved what is chosen term by the user from the spinner object or that drop down menu. uh, and then saving if the first value is checked or selected, we save term in temp object. If second one is selected, we save two terms. After that, duration string, then college, department, floor, level. All these variables are actually extracting the values that is entered by the user in that booking form. One by one, is saving it in a different variable so that we can test all the cases upon hitting the book button. trim. Where is trim? Oh, that trim is just a default function of string class. It will it will clear out all the spaces that is entered after the text. Let's suppose in edit text a user entered something student ID like this 1 2 3 4 and then hit space for like 5 times space. So if you just uh, get it dot get text and then dot to string, if you just retrieve the string value from that edit text without trimming it, you will get those spaces inside as well. So they will also count as character. But if you call trim function on that string, it will clear out all the spaces before and after. No, not slash n. Slash n is for the next line. Check out that. Wait a second. Let me just type it here. Not exactly. For space in before and after the string. Like this, if I type something like this, then I hit spaces after. If you extract this value from added text inside a string without calling trim, it will save this all of this as a string value. But if you call trim function on that, then it will only save this value as a string, removing all the spaces after and before that string. Get it? Uh-huh. Cool. Alright, moving on. Here, booking date, we fetch a calendar object and get a calendar instance from the Android. Calendar instance is like to store to name calendar instance store all the date and time and all that thing of Android. So whenever you need a time, date, we call Mr. Calendar object. From calendar, we fetch year, month, and day of that month to formulate, then format into this pattern, and then it will save in this object, which will be passed later to our web service to do all the magic or anything. Okay, here's which means error. If no cancel, it means user enter everything correctly. After that, we open a alert dialog box which says that agreement in Arabic some Shraita Zwabik shouldn't. If the user hit I accept button, why didn't you change this one into Arabic as well? Everything else is in Arabic. Why haven't then he changed I accept in Arabic to Nafsa. I don't know what that means. So somebody answered. Wow. Oh, okay, okay. Okay, so if you want to change it to Arabic, you can do that. Going next. From this alert dialog, if the user just then this listener will be called, and in this listener we are calling book locker task class, which I have created there in the bottom, executing a web service and then doing everything like that sign in one, passing these values to that book locker task class. Locker number, student ID, duration, college, department, lab, booking date, all the values required for that web service in PHP side. So if the user hit enter, we are just closing the dialog, doing nothing. Moving on to that task thread, we are opening a loader first, saying booking in progress, and then after in the background we have called a function of PHP, which is success response model is the success model. Post is the type of the function we are about to call. Error response model is the error model. Here are all the parameters that are required by that web service. Parameters are passed through a params hash map here, because this is a post method and you cannot pass uh, parameters to a exactly. Awesome. What params in array? Params in array. Exactly, that same thing. Yep. And these tags, actually these are the values nahi, well, not values, names. These are the names of the parameters that will be received in PHP side, will be received by these names. So these are the initializing this web service setup lines, and bottom from this point are syntax which is calling that web service, and on success, when that web service returns success, they're just showing a toast, show success, and whatever is the message, displaying that on the screen in the toast. If there is an exception, we show something went wrong, please try again later. That's it about this booking class. Now moving on to that dialogue. I skipped In that dialog fragment class, we are actually, as you know, showing the lockers to that user. So in user dashboard, in dialog fragment, it should be a show locker cell. Yeah, there it is. Okay, we're going up, up, up. Now this is the tricky part actually. So please be attentive here. Okay, in this dialog, I have created one, two, three, four grid view objects. Four for what do you call them? Column. Four is four for four column. To show four columns in one layout, that's why I used four different grid view objects. Otherwise, we could just use one grid view object and show all the 80 lockers in that one object, but then it will be shown vertically and not horizontally. Okay, moving on to text view. This is just a text view. These are the two string objects which in constructor will receive whatever is sent to them from where they are called. And then four arrays of lockers. Locker model is a custom class containing all the necessary information for a single locker, like its name, there was its status for it is booked or available, that status. Four arrays because of four grid view objects. If there is only one object, then we would have just created one big array. So, and then this base string object just for the base letters of that locker number. After that, there is this onCreateView method which will be called when the view will be created. In that, we are just setting up the layout file, and then this onViewCreated function will be called. In this function, all the initializing part is gonna happen. First of all, receiving the user ID from shared preferences here. Now you did notice that we didn't initialize this global share preference object here, like that new global share prefs this in the previous activities. That's because this is not an activity. This is a dialog fragment, and you already know that a dialog fragment is opened through a dialog fragment, or any fragment is opened through a activity. Uh, Inflator used inflator, which inflator, where is it? Yes, exactly. Inflator is like is like what? I don't know how to say this. Actually, inflator is a manager class which is inflating the front end elements, UI elements. We passed a layout file to this inflator object or function here, which will then set up that layout file to that whatever backend Java class is. So is yes. This inflator is setting for the layout file. This is a custom dialog, so we have created a custom layout file for it. Otherwise, it could receive any just by default layout and then work on that. You have no idea what I'm saying, right? Have you understand it? That inflator, what I just said, anything. Alright, cool. So moving on to this on view created method. In this method, first of all, we initialized that user ID object, getting user ID from the shared preference here, then initializing 4 arrays, assigning 20 size to each array because total lockers are 80, so 4 multiplied by 20 is equals 80. Then linking them to front end here. After that, we check what what is the floor number passed to that dialog fragment. I mean, if it's floor number 1, oh sorry, if it's ground floor, then set GA base variable, and then further we check what is the block number selected. If it's block 1, then it's BA. If it's G. So all this is simply if and else structure, and in what is the value saved or sent in mFloor object from that activity. Okay. Okay. In this, okay, moving on. Next here, just assigning whatever the block number is chosen in the previous activity. Assign that to the text view on the left side, and after that, initializing that grid view objects, assigning all the elements to the grid view here. Grid view is a recycler, recycler list views, right? And then assigning on click list, kind of on click listener to those grid views. On add on item touch listener is an interface same as on item click listener of a list view. This is just a comment auto generate code, you can say. No. Recycler is not like loop. Recycler type like list view. Recycler like list view. Recycler not like loop. Actually, recycler are newly introduced list views in Android. They are much faster than based on usage actually. So that's why I used it. Here, assigning on click listener to each grid view, four of them, and in that on item click listener, we have checked, assigned a check. Okay, that wait, let me expand that. Okay, and here we have checked that on the position that point, or what do you call that, item, what is the position of that item on which user has clicked, and from that array we retrieved that object and checked what is the status of that object. If it is booked, set. Oh, if there it is, there is a note. If it is booked, then we do nothing and just move on. So if it's not booked, then we will save that locker number in selected locker variable we created in global shared preference previously. If it's not booked, we save its number, locker number, whatever is the number of that locker, we save it to shared preference m selected locker object and then close that dialog. Here there's also same thing here, but different array of course. Uh, just a second. Why does it say lockers one to all of them? Is it supposed to say locker two here and three there? I think forgot to update it. What? Oh, just a second. I think I hit control. This is true. check. Third array, maybe that's why it was not checking if the locker is already booked. Not save it. My bad. Okay. So on click listener on all the lockers we have checked. It's first we check its position. From position, go to that. It will go to that. What do you call it? Specific grid view object, and then from that grid view object, it will go to that specific array, and from that array, it will retrieve that locker model, and from that model it will check the status. If it's booked, then just ignore it. If it's not booked, then it will save that locker name to the global shared preference variable we created and close the dialog. So this is the UI part. Now this is the web service we call when we first open this dialog box. Now what this web service call do, it will first open up a loader. It's saying loading lockers, please wait. Then it will call this to in background method. In background, create a URL from the parameters we received. Parameters are floor ID or user ID and floor number. Floor 1, floor 2, floor 3. This web service will return all the lockers available in the all the lockers booked inside that database. It will return all their names, and then in on success we will match all their name to the 4 arrays we created, and we check whichever names matches each other to change that locker's color to red and its status to booked. For all the other lockers which are not in booking or reserve table in DB, we just left that lockers untouched, green colored and same name. In on success, here matching the string success, here receiving the lockers array from JSON from that web service. This is a I forgot just forgot function. What? Okay, this function I forgot to explain is that this function will just receive a locker number and a lockers array. It will actually return true if that locker number is at any point inside that array. Otherwise, it will return false. We here use that function here. Here we are passing each locker number on that dialog fragment, and then lockers fetch the array fetched from that web service, pass both values to that function, and that will return whether it is booked or available. And then we save according to that return data the value inside that locker model, and then save it to set it to its adapter. Of course. So basically, this success function or response function, what it's doing is initializing that grid view, four grid views actually, in that dialog fragment, initializing all its objects, assigning values, and getting that lockers from the database, from our server. Now, after this class, this one is a custom adapter actually. It's a recycler view adapter, simple, all the default methods and functionality is happening here. One locker array, context variable, setting up constructor here. This is view holder method which extends cycler view that view holder. It's the syntax of view holder inside in that new recycler view or recycler list view, you can say. It's actually saying linking or initializing all the elements of that view holder to front end. Then on create view holder, inflating item. Item is the layout of a single item. uh, report locker is the storage or state of locker. Report locker, yep, it's a array storage for not all the state of locker actually. Report locker array keeps all the array which is returned from the web service, from our server actually. When we call that web service, it returns an array containing all the lockers which are booked or reserved. So, what I just said is that report locker is the array which is returned from our server. When we call this web service, our server will will get all the lockers of that floor from booking table and reserved table in all of our collect all the lockers, save them to a array, then return that array in JSON to application, and then we receive that in report locker array. Okay. Okay, awesome. So in this custom adapter, everything is actually the same. Just after that, on bind view holder, this function is called when the view is created. We checked here the value of that single or more locker, sorry, value of that locker, whether it is set to booked or set to available. So we just check booked. If it's not booked, then obviously it's available. So we set green color in else, and if it's booked, we set the red color in booked, background color of that single item. Yeah. Then this is the locker model class. that we used up there for this. It has two string values of locker number and status. Locker number is saving that number of the locker, and status saves the status of that locker. So this is the whole book locker scenario. Whatever your questions are, you can ask them now. Seriously? You understand? Wow, that's great. Thank you, thank you. Okay, so what's next? I don't know Arabic. I think that means Pebekuf, but it means stupid in Urdu. Uh, just hold on for a minute. I think I'm going to need a glass of water. Break. Yeah, yes, kind of a break. My battery is low, and I'm going to put this laptop on charger, and also I'm thirsty. So just 5 to 10 minutes. I will be back in 5 minutes. Till then, you can pile up your question and make a whatever roadmap that what you want to understand next. I will be right back. Just a second.